Welcome back, designers. So as I mentioned in the last video, this time we're going to have a look at how to design a business card inside of Adobe Illustrator. Now, although designing a business card is a pretty simple task, we're going to get into a few different menu items as well as a few different tools. A few of them that we're going to cover in this video will include the shape tool. I'll show you how to place an object into the artboard. We're also going to do some types, so that's going to include the type tool and the character panel. And then as a little bonus, I'm also going to show you how to set up what's called a spot gloss layer. If you're working with different printers, this is a feature that they'll possibly allow you to add. And what it does, at least the way that I like to use it normally, is to take my client's logo, make it really small, make a pattern out of it, and then use that as a spot gloss layer on all or certain parts of the business card. It adds a nice little touch to the card, so when your clients hand it over to somebody, it's kind of a little bit of a wow factor on the card. All right, let's hop into Illustrator, get busy, show you how all this works. See you over there. All right, now before we get started, there's a few things you might want to download or collect, and then we'll get into Adobe Illustrator. Now there's one download for sure down in the description that's called 3.5 by 2.jpg. Grab a copy of that. We're going to use it as kind of a template once we get into Illustrator to show you where our bleed is and where our safety zone is on the card. If you're not really sure what I'm talking about, you might want to go back. I put a link up in the top corner to last week's video that actually talks about bleed and typeface and a bunch of different stuff when we're dealing with business cards. So I've collected a few things here. Now the other thing that you're going to want is inside of Notepad or even just written down on your desk somewhere, just your client's details or the information that we're going to have to type into the card. So things like their name, their position with the company, what the address is. I've got two different phone numbers here, one for an office, one for mobile. You can just go with one if you want, a website address, and then also an email address. Okay, so let's hop into Illustrator. Now I've got the company open that we're actually going to be working with. This is a fake company. This is something that I just made up. I like to work on logos kind of in between client work just to keep my skills sharp, come up with some new ideas, see what I can create. So Vatten is Swedish for water. So we end up going with this V icon, and I had that water droplet in the middle, and then the two arms of the V converging down into that water droplet, one being green, the other one being kind of this slate gray. The slate gray standing for mountains, the green standing for forest, and then of course the blue and the water droplet standing for water. All right, so let's start out. We're going to go up to File, down to New, and I've already got my settings in here. I've been playing around with this a little bit. So we're going number of artboards is going to be 2. Our spacing between these, I want a little bit more than this, and I'll show you why in a couple of minutes. We're going to use the logo kind of off to the one side of the card, and I need some space between my artboards for that. So next we want 2 columns because of course we're designing a front and a back to this card. Each artboard is going to be 3.5 inches by 2 inches. That's our card size. Now this is a North American standard, so if you're watching this anywhere else in the world, you might want to just double check and see kind of what the standard is for your area. I know that over in Europe, business cards are a little bit different size. Of course, we want to be in CMYK. Don't worry about bleed on this. We'll cover bleed in Adobe InDesign once we get inside of there. I don't normally worry about bleed when I'm dealing inside of Illustrator. So I'm going to hit OK. Here's our 2 artboards. Now the first thing that we're going to place inside of here is that 3.5 by 2.jpg. So I'm going up to File, down to Place, and I know I've got that right on my desktop here. Click on that, place it, and then I'm just going to drag it out so that it goes to the right size. Now you'll notice it's a little bit smaller than we need, and this should end up being, so width bleed is 3.625 inches. So up here in my width, I'm going to go 3.625. And I've got the little constrained proportions on, so when I tab out, that's going to blow up to the right size that I need. I can then just highlight it and align it to my artboard. I'm going to Alt and drag a copy over to this other artboard. You see that intersect? Now if you're not seeing kind of those tooltips, like this one says Edge, that last one said Intersect. If you're not seeing those, go up to View and down to Smart Guides and just make sure that that's checked off. All right, now we got both of those placed. I'm gonna go over to my layers panel. Now inside of here, we're actually gonna double click on that and I'm gonna go template because I want these to be locked down on each of the artboards. It's also gonna dim this images down to 50%. The other thing a template layer does is it allows it so that I don't see these if I have to go into outline mode. So if I'm doing some real tight alignment or adjustments, and I need to go into outline mode by putting this to a template layer, it hides this from that selection. So before we get started, onto the business card. Now before we go too far, I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to place something else here. So I'm going to come up there to File, Place, And I've got this image 0476, and these are some sketches that I did of the business cards. I've always liked sketching my ideas out. Even when I did web design, I would come up with my ideas, pull out my sketchbook, and I would actually sketch out sort of concept pages before I'd go into Photoshop or Illustrator. It's just a habit that I got into. It works out really well now that I'm into logo design a lot more, and even stuff like business cards. So the one that we're going to work on today is going to be this top concept. We'll cover this middle one next week in Adobe Photoshop, and then this last one we're going to cover inside of InDesign. And it's just because there's some features that I'm going to do in each one of these that kind of lend themselves a little better to each one of the pieces of software. But we're going to start with this top pair. So the main concept, we've got a client's name and information on the one side of the card with a large logo here. This is going to be white in this area, and then we're going to use this sort of grayish light gray that's the outside of the logo, a different version of that. And then over on this one, we're going to have the main logo in white with this version of the logo in all white as well. Kind of a grayed out background, the same one that's in here. And then in this area, we're going to include a spot gloss of little tiny versions of just the icon. So let's go ahead and grab that logo. So I'm going to copy that over, and I'm just going to come back down here and paste it in. Of course, it's large. Let's bring that down to about the size that we needed. So it's going to be just about 3 inches tall. Let's move that over. Oh, you know what, before I go any further, let's group that. And we're going to move that right about in there. So the droplet is pretty much, it's actually all the way on. Okay. So there's our base of where this logo is going to be. And I'm pretty sure that's good. I might come up a little bit more. I think that'll be okay. Now I'm going to create kind of a background layer into here. And this is going to be just a white layer to start with, just so I can cover up all of that information that's in the back and kind of see where my build is. I'm going to bring that to the front. Bring that to the front is Shift, Command, and then the right square bracket. So now that we have that in place, I want this little area up here to be filled in. But rather than doing a full block or trying to do a little shape there, again, I've got my rectangle tool, and I'm just going to come up here and go out and just pull a square down. And then I'm going to put it back behind, which is just Command left square bracket. Use my eyedropper, which is I on your keyboard, to grab that color. Now I don't want it to be exactly the same shade as that, so I'm going to come up here and we're going to knock this down a little bit. So we're using Pantone colors here, which don't matter. Doesn't matter if you're using Pantone or not. Again, if we're going with a printer that can deal with Pantone colors, that's great. If we're not, it's not a big deal. These will just convert over to CMYK when you save it out. All right, so there's our basics down. Now we do need the client's information, so I'm going to go over to my Pages document here. I'm going to highlight all of that, Command C, and Command V just to paste it in. I just want all of that kind of right there waiting for me. First piece I'm going to grab is going to be the client's name. I'm just going to highlight that, Command C to copy it, and then we're going to come down here and I'm going to paste it in. Now something we talked about in that first video was hierarchy. So making sure that you're dealing with either different sizes or different colors or showing the most important information on the page, or in this case on the business card, in either a bold font or a different color that really stands out. Now we want to use the font that this client was set up with, which is this one here, so this Forma DJR banner. So I'm going to click on that and I should be able to just come up here and type that in. And we've got a few different options here. So I can go up to a bold, a medium, a regular. So let's go in here. For the client's name, I'm actually going to go with bold. And I don't like how tight that is. So let's go to our character panel. So our kerning and tracking are set to 0 and auto. Let's increase tracking on that. That looks good. Okay. Now my font size, I want to go a little higher than 12. I'm going to come up to about 16 just so that that's nice and bold, nice and blocky, no pun intended. Let's grab James's title, which he's the sales director. Back down, I'm going to paste that one in. And right about there. Now I'm just going to use the eyedropper here, and the only reason I'm doing this is to grab the same font and style, and that way I can come back down and we can go say light and then knock that one down. I'm going to go with a font size of 10 for sales director. Spacing on that looks pretty good. I'm happy with where that's sitting. It's not too tight, it's not too close. And again, like I spoke about, this is a small card, right? So I mean, this is only 2 inches tall. So when we think about that, the text, we need to really be careful when we're putting small text on business cards. I see some designs out there that put like a 5-point font. And when you print it out, I mean, I'm 46 and I have a hard time seeing some of the text that's on some of these business cards that are coming out. All right, next let's go with the address. If you notice, I've got the address right down here in this bottom line. So I'm going to come back in. I'm going to paste that. I've got a little bit of editing to do on this. I'm going to pull it right over to the side. And eyedropper again. I'm going to grab this one this time. And I'm just going to click inside there and get rid of some of that spacing. Now when I put a postal code in, I normally do 2 spaces after the postal code just to give it a little bit of breathing room after, unless you're going into multiple lines, of course. This isn't too bad. I don't like the spacing here that's in between the logo and the postal code, so I might bring that type down a little bit, but I kind of like that 10 points, so I think instead what I'll do is grab both of these and just give them a little nudge over. That's got some good spacing to it. You know what, let's do this instead. Let's go down to 9, and that opens it up even better. That's looking good. Okay, so next we have phone numbers. We have 2 different phone numbers here. So again, one is an office number and one is a cell number. We're going to go down to that font again. I'm going to pull these over just a little bit. There's a couple of different ways you can do this. I mean, it just depends on the design that you're going with. You'll see something like this, which I think is nice and clean. I'm actually going to go with a smaller case there. So the O and C, you could use M and C, you could use M and M, mobile and main. You could use O and M, office and mobile. So talk with your client a little bit, get a feel for what they like. If they've got an older business card, you can maybe pull some information off of that. If this is a brand new card for them, make sure that it's clear. That's the one thing that I don't like about using single letters, is it's not really clear what this actually stands for. So a lot of the times I'll actually just type this out. So office and cell. Now, if you're a sticker for alignment on all of this kind of stuff, you could run into some difficulties if you're going to have like major OCD on how to lay things out, because words like office and cell. So I'll try and find 2 words here that are pretty close. Office and mobile. That works a little bit better. You could use icons here as well. I normally prefer to use text over icons. Icons work. They're universal, so I mean they're a good thing to use, but I just prefer type. So we're going to go with those. I'm actually going to pull these down here. All right, so let's get our last 2 pieces of information in here. Now, I'm not going to pull the web address. We're actually just going to grab the email address for this side of the card. I'm going to paste it in, and we're going to go with that same size font for sales director. I'm going to place that right there. So I think we've got good hierarchy here. There's some nice spacing, right? A little bit of room here. It's just some breathing room between kind of James's information, the main information, and then his contact details down below. It's not too tight. Nothing's really too small. We could probably drop each one of these down a little bit, but I prefer not to go too small, right? Like if we take these and dropped them down to, like say, all a 9 or even an 8, we're just getting way too tiny. This is what I was talking about in that first video again, about how make sure that you're designing for your client's client. So let's go back up. I think 9's actually a good size for the rest of this information. Let's stay with that. I'm going to stick with 9 on this one. James and his information, right? So his position and his name can stay that way. Now let's work with a little bit of color. So let's grab James's name, and I think for James, we're actually going to go with that same gray. And I'm going to do the same with sales director, right? So those are both going to be the same color. This one I'm not sure. Do we want it to stand out? If we go green, is that too much? I think it works. Again, James making up everything as I go along here, but James is a guy that likes email. So he prefers his clients to get in touch with him through email. So if we make that stand out, that's going to be that one piece of information that maybe instead of calling, they're going to go, oh, well, let's just send him a quick email, right? Because it's different color. It's going to clue for them differently. Now, let's just grab these last ones, and I think we're going to go the same dark kind of gray-green that we've got here for the main logo. And I think that's good. I don't want anything else to stand out on the side of the card. Okay, so let's move over to the back of the card. If we look at the design again, so we've got that same V. Now this one we're going to go all white. We also want the full logo that's going to be here, and it's going to be white again. And then we're going to use that sort of color that we use down here as the main part of the card. So let's start with that. I'm going to grab this and just alt drag it over. And then I can expand it out to the exact size that I want. That's going to be our base for the card. And that's one thing we didn't check. Let's have a quick look here before we move on to the back of the card. I'm just going to grab that white area and I'm going to drop the opacity down on it just to make sure. And you see this right here, if I zoom in, so there's our safety line. It's a good thing we came and checked. All right, because that G, there's a possibility that it could end up getting cut off or be too close to the side of the card here or the bottom of the card. So let's just grab office and the address, and I'm just going to nudge it up twice. Zoom back out and just check my spacing again. So I think that's a little better. It's inside of that safety zone, so we should be okay. There's going to be little discrepancies there when they do their cut, but everything else is clean and good. We're good on the side here. Okay, so let's knock that back up to 100, and then we can go back to our other side of the card. So I'm going to grab a copy of this logo, and we're going to drag it over. I want it close to the same. So there we're on the outside. Let me just back up here and have a look at that. So if I were to do that one the same, we'd want that one just kind of right inside of the outside of the card or the border of the card. All right, so that looks good. Let's grab a full version of the logo. I should have one right here. I'm going to copy that over, paste it in. And again, we need to knock the size down. So I mean, height, I should be about 1.5. Let's go even smaller. Let's go 0.75. We'll go half of that. No, smaller yet. Let's just size it in there and then we'll see. So that's going to go there. So I can go 0.5 inches. Now I want the whole thing to be white, so we're going to have a couple of cutouts here because I don't want these to be just filled in solid. Let me just double click to get in. And eyedropper this so we get the whole piece in white. I'm going to do the same thing here. So we're going to get rid of the green. Oh, I didn't knock these ones out. So let's just grab this. And I'm going to come over to my Pathfinder and I'm going to hit this divide here, which is going to split this into 4 different icons or 4 different pieces now. And then I can double click into isolation mode and delete those center pieces out. And eyedropper that. And then we have that. Now I'm not really digging this. I don't like the white in the white. And I think this is too much. So let's grab this and I'm actually going to knock the opacity on that down to about 60. Let's go even further. Let's go down to 40. I think that's good, just as a sort of an overlay on that gray. And then this, I'm going to delete and grab a fresh copy of it because I'm going to leave it in full color for the icon, but white for the type. And let's just grab both of those. So I've shift clicked on the text and then on the background. I'm going to click again on the background and I get that dark red line. And that way I know that's my key object and I'm going to align to that. Now the one piece of information that we didn't include on the other side of the card, of course, is that vattenpure.ca, which is their web address. So I'm going to click that in here and I want that in a bold type. So again, I use my eyedropper just to grab that, and we're going to pull this right in here. That's too wide. I think if we tuck it right down underneath there, and just center it up. I might even align it to that side. I don't know if I like that. If we put this a little larger and right down here, and then center it on the logo. Nope, let's go right aligned on the logo. Okay, so I like where this is going. This is a good spot for this. I'm going to try one last thing, and we're just going to put it into, okay, that color doesn't work. Let's try the blue. Let's try the green. I think the green is the best. I think that kind of stands out a little better on the front of the card, and it won't get lost or kind of hidden in the background. Now, there's one last thing that we need to do here, and that's the spot gloss layer that I was talking about. So I already have a pattern that I made when I put this brand together, which we've got right here. I'm just going to copy that over. Now, there's a couple of things you're going to want to know when dealing with spot gloss. You're going to want to check with your printer to find out their process. Majority of the printers that I've ever worked with in the past wanted this as a separate piece. So it's going to have to be a last kind of file that you're going to save out, and it's going to have to be 100% black. So although we're going to lay it out here, I'm just going to paste it down, and let's shrink this down because I want it pretty small. I don't want it as big as the logo is. Let's go about 2 1/4. I think that should be good. I'm gonna have to go a bit bigger because I want it to fill in this space here, and I don't want to have to add any new ones in right now. So that'd be good. And I'm going right out to the edge, so I've got this going out to the bleed, so it's not going to get, it's not going to be, you know, kind of weird on the edge here or anything. And you'll kind of see how that's going to work. Now, there's a few things I need to do here because I want to use a layer mask to be able to show my client kind of how this is going to work. And it can't cover all of these different areas. Essentially, the selection that I want is going to be inside of here, and I don't want it to go over top of the website, and I don't want it to be over top of this logo. So in order for me to do that, I need to make a shape that has a few different things cut out of it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hide the pattern. I'm going to go Command 3, and that's going to hide it for me. It's still right in the exact same spot, but it's gotten rid of it out of view. Now I'm going to highlight everything, and we're going to Command C and Command F to paste a copy of the whole artboard right in front. I'm going to drag it up and out of the way here, just so we can work on this piece. There's a couple of things I want to do. I noticed that I've got a few different shapes here, so what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to highlight all of that, and we're just going to knock that out. I'm also going to convert this. So I'm going to take my live text and go create outlines. So what I'm trying to do here is get it so that I've got just this light gray shape, but only on this side. So on this right side of the main logo. So next I'm going to highlight all of it, and we're going to come over here and divide in my Pathfinder, and then I'm going to right click, ungroup. Now there's a few things that I want to keep here. Number one, I want to keep the insides of these letters. So I'm going to have to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to deselect. So shift click on this back area. I'm going to shift click on that part of the A, that part of the E. And I'm going to do the same thing down here on a few different letters, just to keep the insides of each one of those. So I've shift clicked on all of those sections that I want to keep, which they're now unselected. So when I hit delete on my keyboard, that leaves me with this shape. So now I'm going to take all of this, because I want it all together. I'm going to go up to Object, down to Compound Path, and I'm going to go Make. So now this is going to work as our mask. So if I bring this back over and put it in place, and I can kind of use that background, I'm going to go Command Shift right square bracket, which is going to bring it to the very front of this artboard. And then I'm going to go Option Command 3 to unlock that pattern. So now what I want to do is we're actually going to go here, And I'm going to click on my pattern. So I've got both of those selected. Then I'm going to right click and make clipping mask. So now what this is done, this is our layer, and I can actually send this over as a separate piece, and that's going to be the layer. Now again, there's a couple of other steps that you're going to have to do here. So let me just Command Z, back that up. I'm going to Alt drag a copy of this out, and then I'm going to have to click in here, and you'll see that my opacity is down to 30. So I'm going to pull that up to 100. And I'm also going to double click into it and change my color to 100% black. So this is the file that I'm going to send the printer that's going to be my spot gloss layer. And they'll be able to use that as a secondary print once the business cards are done. And that'll end up printing over top. And so each one of these little icons that's on here now is going to be kind of a raised but clear varnish that goes on top of the business card. So there's our finished card. I think it turned out pretty good. I didn't have any copies of this printed. There's other things that you could do, of course. I mean, we could have knocked these out and actually had the spot gloss go all the way through. I just think it's a different style. It's something that's going to stand out for the back of this business card. And again, I mean, it's something that we're going to send to the client at this point. We're going to get their feedback on it, see what they think of it. If we have to, I can get in touch with the printer, have them print a one-off for me and send it out. It's a little bit more expensive because, of course, they're doing one business card for just you. And if you've got something like spot gloss involved, it's probably going to be more money than it's really worth to do that sample. So talk to your client, have some samples. If you need to, get in touch with your printer, because a lot of them will send out a sample box, and that way you can go visit your client and say, okay, here, this is what it's going to be like. Or if you're doing this over Zoom, you can show them the business card and kind of, get it in the light and show them the different variety of what's going to happen when they have it under different lights, under different situations.